Former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert was, emphasis on was, an advocate for Israel's war on Gaza. In January 2024, he began changing his mind, pushing instead for a limited military operation there. Fast forward to today, he's on a mission to topple Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at next year's legislative elections. He says he disagrees with his plans to reoccupy Gaza and how Israel has been handling the situation there entirely from a humanitarian and military perspective. So has Netanyahu actually achieved any of the goals he wanted, and where does he go from here as more Israelis demand for the war to end? This is Beyond the Headlines, and I'm your host, Nada AlTaher. In this episode, I speak to former Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Olmert about what he makes of Israel's pursuit of this seemingly never-ending war, and what needs to happen there if there is ever to be a sustainable solution for the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. Israel continues daily attacks, killing civilians, healthcare workers, journalists, and emergency crew. A lot of this onslaught is caught on camera. And the cabinet last month approved Israel's reoccupation of Gaza. Last week, the UN declared a famine in Gaza, and more than 300 people have died of hunger so far, 117 of them children. I asked Olmert what he thinks of Israel's policies at this stage of the war.
I am against furthering the military operation to take over entirely Gaza. I think this is unreasonable and unnecessary. I think that what we have to do is now to make an agreement to end the war immediately and to bring back all the hostages. And then, of course, part of the agreement will be also the release of Palestinian prisoners and hopefully the creation of interim security force that will be made of Palestinians, of soldiers from moderate Arab countries, Egypt, Jordan, Emirates, perhaps Saudis, Bahrainis, and others, that will step in Gaza, will allow Israel to pull out completely, and will establish the necessary defense mechanism to stop any further action by Hamas. Hamas will have to be disarmed completely. There will also have to be a mechanism that will allow the Palestinian Authority to appoint a group of commissioners that will hold the executive authority to govern Gaza, assuming, of course, that the basis for any development is the removal of any position of leadership by Hamas. It will have to be linked to the Palestinian Authority, but at the same time to have completely independent executive powers to govern Gaza. I think that we have to make it, at the meantime, until this is implemented, every possible effort to provide the humanitarian needs of the people living in Gaza, as long as Israel is in charge of Gaza. And definitely we are in charge at the present time. It's incumbent upon us to provide all the humanitarian needs of the Palestinian living there. And the army that had the resourcefulness and the ability to attack Iran 1,200 kilometers from Israel successfully should have the power and the logistical means to provide food for the people that live 20 kilometers from the Israeli borders. And this is what we have to do.
So what do you make of the UN famine report? Israel has disputed it. Of course, COGAT even released an embargoed statement to the media ahead of time in anticipation of the reports, saying that it's false and inaccurate. And then you even saw Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who came out and denied it. How could there be such a strong denial of something that is so widespread and documented and almost indisputable at this point?
There are definitely many events of starvation, many events of the lack of food and humanitarian needs that causes terrible pain and suffering for people. And as I said before, it's incumbent upon Israel to provide all the humanitarian needs. Now, what exactly is written in the report, I don't know. I never read it. I couldn't compare the arguments there against other arguments, so I'd rather not comment on that. The bottom line is that I don't doubt that there are many more that can be tolerated of events of human suffering and starvation, and this as a result of the lack of supply of humanitarian needs. And this is incumbent upon Israel to do everything to make sure that this is provided. And if it is not done, this is a failure and responsibility of Israel.
The prevalent response from people within the Israeli government to what you're saying right now is that they say they don't want the aid to fall into the hands of Hamas. Although this is something that has been disputed both by US and Israeli experts, that this is even happening. So what do you say to people who are saying that Israel is limiting the entry of aid because it doesn't want the aid to fall into the hands of Hamas? And therefore, if people have to suffer, then I guess they have to suffer as a result.
Hamas is a terrorist organization made up of terrible murderers. What they are capable of doing, we saw on the 7th of October, and this is not something that can be forgotten, tolerated, or forgiven. But I don't want to go into the specifics because I'm not familiar with all the logistical arrangements that can be made. Israel should find a solution that will make sure that all the needs of the humanitarian needs of the people are provided. Full stop. But at the same time, no one should listen carefully and seriously to the Hamas complaints because Hamas is a terrorist organization and it deserves to be eliminated.
You've said that the war was unnecessary and that total victory that Netanyahu wants to achieve is unachievable. So what was the tipping point for you that made you decide there's no point right now in continuing this and that a deal needs to be made? What was that moment when you thought, okay, enough is enough?
Hamas has been politically broken down and militarily broken down almost completely. It has not been eliminated, and I don't think that elimination, or complete elimination, or the total victory that the Prime Minister wants is achievable. I mean, to the extent that there will be no one in Gaza holding a gun or holding an RPG or holding a hand grenade and can throw it and attack some Israelis. As long as Gaza is definitely in its present status of almost total destruction, there will always be some people that will be anxious to fight and to kill and to shoot. But in terms of, its military buildup, Hamas is more or less eradicated. And I think to the extent that a war can be effective in these circumstances, I think the Israeli war was effective. It caused the terrible death of a huge number of people, many more than were maybe acceptable and tolerated. I don't know to say if the accurate number of victims is 60,000 or 63,000 or 55,000. I guess that maybe 20% of them, or maybe more, were Hamas fighters, and they deserve to be killed because they were perpetrating the most terrible, atrocious, barbaric, horrific murder of innocent people as they did. But there are so many who are not. Now, at this point in life, there is no need for any further military action. The desire to expand the military operation is unacceptable, and the majority of Israeli people, more than 70%, explicitly say that they are in favor of ending the war immediately and returning back all the hostages. So this is what we need to do.
Why do you think that the Israeli government has then continued the war? And what do you think will happen to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu if he does decide to end the war?
You have to ask him. I can't explain him. I don't want to explain him. I don't like to explain him, and I don't want to justify him. I can only say that I totally disagree with him, and I think that it should be stopped. And if he will not stop it, I hope that we will be successful in overthrowing him.
So you don't think he's going to survive any elections?
I hope not. I'll do everything in my power to make sure that he will not.
If you were Prime Minister on October 7, 2023, what would you have done differently?
This is an unfair question to ask because I can say anything I want. How can you judge me? How can you examine me? How can you argue with me? Retroactively, it's very easy to say. I would have stopped the war. I can say what I said. I said in January of 2024, which is a year and a half ago, I thought that we should limit the military operation to the minimum, and we have to start and propose a political horizon for the day after. And from the very beginning, I said that if we will not be able to have a vision of what we want to achieve that will go further than just the immediate military operation, we will lose ground and we will lose the sympathy of the international community and we will lose the war. And this is basically what I think today. if we will be very successful, as largely we were, and we will eliminate every person that holds a gun in Gaza. Okay, we will kill everyone. There will not remain one person holding a gun. There will still be 2.2 million Palestinians living in Gaza. What do we think about their future? What do we want to achieve that will try to resolve the conflict between Israel and Gaza, between Israel and the Palestinians, further than just a military confrontation? As you may know, I signed, together with the former foreign minister of the Palestinian Authority and the former ambassador to the UN, Dr. Nasser al-Qudba, a very impressive and significant person. And we signed a document together, which is called a proposal for the end of the war and the negotiations between Israel and Palestine on the basis of two states. We published it already in July of 2024, more than a year ago.
There's now growing momentum, especially among countries in the West, as we're seeing, to push for the recognition of Palestinian statehood. What are your thoughts on all of this?
I'm very much in favor of a comprehensive solution of the historical conflict between us and Palestine on the basis of two states. I've proposed it to the Palestinian Authority in 2008 when I was Prime Minister. Israel proposed to the Palestinians a solution on the basis of two states with an annexation of approximately 5%, 4.8%, 4.4% differences, marginal differences, with a swap of territories equal size to the territories that will be annexed, that will be of territories of Israel prior to 1967, so that the proposal that I gave to Abu Mazen, to the Dr. Mahmoud Abbas, the president of the Palestinian Authority in 2008, was on the basis of the two state on the 67 borders. I also proposed that the Arab side of Jerusalem will be the capital of Palestine. I also proposed that the old city of Jerusalem will not be under any exclusive political sovereignty, that it will be administered by a trust of five nations: Saudi Arabia, Jordan, Palestine, Israel, and America. I also proposed that the Palestinian refugee issue will be resolved within the framework of the Arab League Peace Initiative, which was originally approved on the 28th of March 2002 in Beirut and was reconfirmed on the 28th of March 2007 in Riyadh. Now, it's true that the Israeli government, the present Israeli government, is against it. I'm not certain that I know what will the future Israeli government do. And I think that the Palestinian Authority has to make the necessary adjustments and the necessary reforms to make it a more adequate and relevant effective political body that will be able to deal with the challenges that needs to be met by both sides.
So what do you make of Israel's image as it stands on the global stage right now? It's become seemingly increasingly isolated in the international community. Do you think that it's going to come back from that at any point at all?
We are losing ground, obviously, because the Palestinians' suffering seems to take over the sentiment of the international community for reasons which can be understood. What I'm not certain about is that the present initiative to recognize a Palestinian state is the right way to go. I'm in favor of a two-state solution. But the question is, what is more useful? To recognize a state that doesn't exist, or to use all the accumulated political influence of all the Europeans and the others that will support this initiative to force the leadership of Israel and Palestine to embark on negotiations that will create a Palestinian state? How can a state can be recognized if there is not a state? Look, I've been around. I've been dealing with these issues all my life, okay? I've invested every minute of my time in the last 25 years trying to reach a conclusion on that basis. And I'm telling you that I'm not certain that to recognize a state that doesn't exist is the best possible way of dealing with it.
What do you think can change Netanyahu's position right now? Because nothing seems to be working. Not the ICC, not the ICJ, not statements of condemnation, not negotiations and talks. Everything seems to have failed so far. So what do you think is going to change, if anything at all is able to, the trajectory of Prime Minister's path right now?
What I think can influence him, one person can influence him, one person can force him, one person can order him to change course. And this is President Trump. When President Trump will understand that supporting Netanyahu is going to the sidelines of history and that this is not going to be effective and not going to be constructive and not going to be fruitful for anything that perhaps Trump wants. If he wants to be the man of peace, he has to use his power of persuasion to say to Netanyahu, enough is enough. He can do it. He has the power to do it. He has the means of doing it. And he needs to have the desire to do it. And I hope he will have it sooner than later. With Trump, the negative side is that he's unpredictable. The positive side is he's unpredictable. And if he's unpredictable, he can be here today and there tomorrow. So I wish that he will be there tomorrow rather than where he is now.
That's it for Beyond the Headlines. Follow our coverage on Gaza and more on thenationalnews.com. This episode was produced by Ben Barqawi and audio engineered by Arthur Edison. Farid is our editor, and I'm your host, Nada AlTaher. Thank you for listening.